Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. But I decided, why not go back to almost 7-8 months ago and do another Reddit Let's Not Meet story. I have 4 stories. They range in length from long to medium to small to whatever. And I only chose these stories based off what the title said. So the first one caught my attention because it's titled, "I think there is someone living in my shed." By the way, I texted myself all of these. So the first story says, "I think there is someone living in my shed." The title says it all, but it also doesn't say anything. Lately, I've been noticing something off about home. Like there's something else there with me, my wife and our 2 dogs, but I have not been able to put my finger on it until today. For some context, I live in a duplex. We share the property with another guy in his mid-20s. He has his own house and we have ours, but we share the laundry room that leads to our respective backyards that are separated by a fence. This all started around 2 months ago when the guy sent me a text. "Hey man, just a heads up, someone stole my bike out of the sunroom." This is extra creepy because to get to our sun/laundry room, you would need to hop the brick fence surrounded by shrubby trees and then hurl the bike over. Unless the thief had the most expensive pair of balls ever and walked it out through one of our front doors when we weren't home. Either way, I didn't feel right and made more of an effort to keep the door locked. Fast forward to a couple weeks ago. I let my dogs into the backyard and one of them starts sniffing the shed. No big deal, the lizards are coming out with it heating up. They have probably just chased one under the door. I finally got them to come in, but didn't give it much thought. I hardly ever go into that shed. Nothing wrong with it, it's just kind of out of the way, and I'm not really a hang in the shed type of guy. So we generally use it for storage. Suitcases, furniture that doesn't match or fit the house, camping stuff, boring suburban shit. We've probably entered it maybe 3 times a year. After the 18th day in a row, the dogs being curious about the shed, I decided to have a little look-see to see if maybe there was a Komodo dragon or something in there since they wouldn't let this thing go. Nope, no Komodo dragon, but what I did find literally made me piss myself a little, just a few drops. Inside the shed was the bike that my neighbor had stolen a little while back. My first thought was, oh fuck, my wife is a klepto. But quickly ruled that out. She doesn't even like to bike. Then I was briefly worried that my neighbor thought I was a thief. I mean, it's in my shed. I don't know how to explain that if he found out. Plus, I wanted to give him his bike back. I kept looking around and found one of our sleeping bags unraveled but balled up behind a box. Inside of it was a sack of what looked to be around $20 in change in singles. There was also a bag for garbage that had lots of food wrappers inside. Eventually, my brain accepted what it was ultimately denying at first and put 2 and 2 together. Someone, I don't know who, is living in my shed. Or at least was. Maybe my dogs spooked them off, or maybe they sleep there every night and leave during the day. If they weren't coming back, why would they leave the change? I left everything how I found it and thinking about what I should do next. Whoever did it must have gotten in through the spare set of keys I keep hidden in the backyard. I locked up and brought them inside with me tonight. Hopefully, whoever it is gets the message and moves on. I'm going to install cameras tomorrow. I will keep you guys updated if anything more happens. Please hope for the best and that this person isn't a lunatic." To be honest with you, if I found out somebody was living in my shed, and I don't know, I think I'd call the cops. That'd be my first thought. I wouldn't not tell my wife and not tell my neighbor. I think I would tell them. And I read a comment on this one. It was like, dude, you need to tell your wife and your neighbor. They need to know that someone's living in your shed. And I 100% agree with that. Tell them. So the second story is very long. It's called "The Man That Lived in the Woods on My Property and Eventually Tried Breaking Into My Home." A few years ago, I moved to a relatively remote part of my town with my boyfriend. We owned a small section of the land behind our home, which consisted of the woods, a creek, and general shrubbery. I take my dogs out there every day for walks, and one day came across what looked like a campsite where a homeless person would live. There was a basket full of sticks and what I assumed was being used for for firewood, a mattress, blankets, and tarp. It looked relatively kept, so I assumed someone must be actively staying there. I went off in a different direction and decided to stay away from the area. I told my boyfriend about what I came across that day, and we were trying to figure out what we should do to eventually remove this person, as this was our land and we didn't feel comfortable having someone camping out so close to our home. We sort of forgot about it for a few months until one day I was walking past the area again with the dogs, and curiosity got the best of me, so I went to have a snoop. Once again, I found the same layout, though much more unkept. There were some leftover food items and the remainder of a fire. I quickly left. That same night, as I was waiting on my boyfriend to get home, I was in the kitchen cooking and facing the window that looked out towards the woods. I thought I had seen someone standing next to a tree, but it was so dark, and I have horrible eyesight, so I didn't try to overthink it. But then I actually started thinking our home and property was fenced, and that little campsite I saw again today. I freaked myself out. Could it be the person that was staying there? I knew someone was probably was, but I didn't think that they'd want to show themselves, if that makes sense. I carried on cooking and thinking on it, hyping myself up in a bad way. I kept looking around but couldn't see anyone, so I just hoped it was anxiety and my overthinking. Then there was a knock at the back door. We had a curtain covering the window on the back door, so I couldn't see who it was, and I wouldn't be able to see from the window either, where I was standing either. I went to the door and moved the curtains. No one was there. The dogs had started barking at that point, which if you have dogs, you know that when you feel anxious, then barking can freak you out even more. That is true. My dog does it, and it freaks me out, especially if I'm home alone. I had my Alexa playing and turned her off to be able to hear better. The dogs were barking in the front room at the windows, but I couldn't see anything. I shut the curtains fully and then calmed the dogs down, but I was feeling very, very uneasily. Suddenly a noise came from the kitchen, like someone was jumping against the door. Like the dogs started to go crazy again and ran to the kitchen. I went after them. The door was jittering and moving. Someone was trying to get in. The pole that was keeping up the curtain fell, and I saw a man wearing what looked like a white face mask, some sort of cover to conceal his face. He kept pushing on the door, and I was hyperventilating at that point. If I left at the front door, he could run and get to me in seconds. So I left the dogs downstairs and ran upstairs, locking myself in the bathroom. I felt so scared. I was scared for my dogs. I called the police as I could hear the back door keep getting hit and the dogs barking so loudly. Remember how I haven't even been able to tell the police my address before the noises stopped? I could just hear the barking, but no more bashing sounds. I was momentarily convinced he had gotten in, but surely I'd be able to hear some sort of struggle, as my dogs were two large German shepherds. Yet there was nothing I could hear. The police did arrive very soon. My back door was still intact. I spoke to them through the bathroom window as I was scared to come down before they assessed the house from outside. I had to calm the dogs down before I let the police in, as the dogs were very riled up. I then told the police about the homeless person who lived in the woods. They had a look in the area and couldn't seem to find anyone or anything suspicious. That was until a few weeks later, when myself and my partner, along with the dogs, walked down to that campsite again to see if it had been abandoned or not, on the slim chance that they did have something to do with the break-in. And we found this. There's a link, but I can't click it. The white mask that I spoke about before, how I couldn't tell what it was. It's hanging on the tree. Gloves and boots were hidden in a bag, which we found by the creek, soaking wet. Apparently, all this wasn't there when the police went down there that night. Though the campsite, for the first time, definitely looked abandoned, we sent pictures to the police, who came out again soon after. But even though they had all this evidence, safe to say, nothing was ever done about it. Most likely, as there was no successful break-in, we got everything removed from the campsite and taken away in a skip. Who knows what would have happened if the back door gave in. I still worry thinking about it, and it's left me with a lot more unresolved anxiety than I already had. It would be terrifying. That would be absolutely fucking terrifying. Title really, and I mean this, really caught my attention, and I like stories that catch my attention just because I'm that kind of person. So this is titled, "My Brother Saw a Ghost as a Kid. 2 decades later, I realized what he actually saw." I was about 7 years old, my brother about 10. It was well past our bedtime when our mom woke up off the couch to put us to bed. Our dad worked construction out of town back then, so it was often just us three at home for weeks at a time. Up the stairs and to the immediate right was our parents' bedroom. Going left put you in the middle of a hallway. Taking another left down that hallway led to my brother's room. The opposite end was my room, which was also across the hall from our upstairs bathroom. At either end of the hallway were our windowed doors we always kept locked and rarely used. The door on my end led to a balcony overlooking our front yard, and the door on my brother's end opened to our back porch. The house kind of leaned into a small hill. My brother and mom both had a habit of waking up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. I only knew this because I was always a light sleeper, and they just couldn't help flushing with the door wide open. This night, however, my brother stopped on his way back to his room and came towards the bathroom. I'm going to try to pee before I go to bed. Past 2 nights, I've been too afraid to walk to the bathroom. I keep seeing a man wearing stripes at the end of the hallway. I don't know if my mom wrote it off as my brother telling ghost stories to try and scare me, or if she was already half asleep and didn't catch it. But she didn't react at all to my brother's confession. I, on the other hand, was terrified by it, as I think most 7-year-olds would be if their 10-year-old brother said, "I've been seeing a man at the end of the hallway." The fear of seeing a ghost like that at the end of the hallway or through the windows is the reason I started running from the stairs to my bedroom at night. Years later, when I was about 18, my mom and I were having a conversation in her car about a dog we had for a very short time when I was little. We were sharing stories on Max's tendency towards destroying my shoes and other unruly behaviors when my mom blurted out, "Do you remember that time I opened the front door for the cops and Max ran inside to the kitchen and started tearing open that big bag of dog food we had?" This really caught me by surprise because in all the years I lived in the house, we never once called the cops. Gun owner family in a quiet rural West Virginia neighborhood, etc. I asked her what she was talking about, and she looked equally surprised as if she had just revealed something by accident. "Oh, that's right. I never told you because you were too young at the time." One night, I woke up hearing noises outside my window, and when I looked, I saw a man staring into my bedroom. She went on to describe how turning the lights on caused him to take off running, and how she grabbed my dad's pistol before calling the cops. I can't remember all the details I gave them when they showed up. Tall white man wearing a striped shirt and jeans, short dark hair, something like that. They said it matched the description of a man they were looking for in the area. Turns out he had escaped from jail on a murder charge. Now, I know it sounds so obvious hearing those 2 stories back to back, but it wasn't until a few years ago in my mid-20s that I pieced together that my brother had unknowingly warned us about a murderer who spent multiple nights casing our house. That would be terrifying. And not knowing until almost 2 decades later that your brother was warning you about a murderer, that's so weird. That's creepy. So we are on to the final story. This one is long, and this was the first one I saw when I looked on Reddit, and it caught my attention because the title was so short compared to the other ones I just read, and there was discussion in the comments being like, well, just because they provided evidence doesn't mean that this story's real, and I was like, maybe I should read this to my YouTube subscribers without reading it myself, so we could both have, all of us have the same kind of reaction to it. So, the title is "The Man on My Patio." And there's a warning. Long post, but I recommend you to read it all. Okay, so this happened when I was around 9 years old. They're 25 now. And it's something I will never forget. It gives me goosebumps to this day. I live in a terraced house, so 4 houses combined. And my neighbors and I each have our own little patio. There's a small road 10 meters from my yard where people do their Sunday walks and so on. Only a small fence separates my small yard and patio from that road. I live in a pretty crowded area with several of these terraced houses spread around in my neighborhood. So seeing people walking on that road is pretty normal for me. Seeing random people standing on my patio is not. When I was 9, I usually got home from school about an hour before my mom got home from work. I lived maybe 50 meters away from school, so my mom figured I was mature enough to be home alone for around an hour before she got home. So one day I got home from school. I did the usual thing, which was make sure I locked the front door, double-checked that the back door leading to the patio was locked. It was 9. Being alone was a little scary, even though it was in the middle of the day and only for 1 hour. I then rushed to my room upstairs to play as much PlayStation as possible before my mom came home from work and made me do homework. While playing, I heard this noise coming from outside my window. My room was located 1 floor above the patio, with a view to the road I told you about before. It was kind of like the sound of a cat. My cat had been missing for over 3 months. Hope sparked, and I thought, oh my gosh, did he finally come back? I ran downstairs to check if it was my cat, but the sight that met me gives me goosebumps just writing this. There was a guy sitting on my patio, a tall guy with black hair covering half of his eyes, making him look like a male version of the Ring Woman or something. I could hear him making high-pitched sounds, almost like a cat meowing. Brown liquid was running down from his mouth, and I could see him spitting out my dad's stomped cigarettes. He was actually eating from the ashtray. I was frozen observing this, eventually snapped out of it and screamed so loud that the man must have heard it. He didn't react. He kept on eating from the ashtray. I ran upstairs to my room, locked the door, and called my mom, who then called the cops. I've never been more terrified in my life, laying in bed under my sheets, shivering with fear, as I hear these creepy high-pitched noises from the guy eating cigarette stumps from the ashtray in my patio. I kind of blacked out for a moment, because the next thing I remember is the police arriving on the road by my yard. I hear them talking to the guy saying stuff like, "What are you doing? Get over here, we'll have to come down and arrest you," and so on. He didn't respond, but the high-pitched sounds was more frequent and louder. I decided to look through the window, feeling safe now that the cops were here. I could see 2 police officers standing by my fence, 1 woman and 1 man. I did not see the creepy man, however, because he was standing directly 1 story under me and out of my field of view. The police jumped the fence, and I remember hearing the creepy guy screaming louder than anything I've ever heard before. He charged the female police officer with full force, and he fucking knocked her out cold. The male officer then immediately tased the guy, leaving him shaking on the ground, screaming still. The policeman struggled to keep him on the ground while putting handcuffs on him, but eventually made it. After a while, he managed to wake the female police officer, who seemed to be badly hurt. He called for backup and an ambulance, and then he sees me standing in the window above him. The expression on my face must have been something else, because he just looked at me and said, "I sure as hell hope you didn't see all that." I started to cry. By this time, neighbors started to arrive, wondering what the hell was going on. One of my neighbors, an elderly woman, made me come down, and she took care of me until my mom came back home. The police took the creepy guy with them in the car and left. Before they left, they promised to come back and talk to us about what had happened. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The male police officer came back later that night and sat down with me and my mom to talk. He explained that the guy in the patio was actually diagnosed with severe autism. He had escaped a facility where mentally challenged people lived, located around 5 kilometers from where I lived. He explained that the guy had actually been living in my house 5 years ago, but he had been forced to move when his mom, his only caretaker, died. The poor guy probably thought he would find his mom in my house. He missed the routines, and he missed living there with his mom. The police had to move him from the house that time 5 years ago because he was extremely strong. From what I heard, the extreme tensions in the body because of autism making his muscles grow stronger and stronger throughout the years. This was the reason he reacted the way he did when the police came this day. Still frightened, I told the police officer that he needed to make sure this would never happen again. He promised it wouldn't. After a few sleepless nights, my life got back to normal. The years went by and the guy didn't come back until 1 year ago. At this time, my mom and dad had moved out. I bought the house from them, and I'm still living there today. I was enjoying my morning coffee on the patio when I see this random guy stopping on the road by my fence. He just stands there, looking at me. I look at him and give him a nod, and then I hear the high-pitched noises. Holy shit, it's him. His hair had turned gray, but the high-pitched sounds made me realize. My heart started racing, and I instantly remembered the reason why he was back. I realized that he must have managed to escape again because I kept my cool a little bit longer than I when I was 9. I started to realize how sorry I felt for the guy. 16 years later, and he was back to look for his mom. I decided to carefully ask him if he wanted to come down to the patio. He instantly jumped the fence. I started to think he would knock me out like he did that police officer. He didn't. He smiled. He looked at me and smiled. I offered him to sit down. He didn't respond. I offered him to come inside. He started laughing. We went inside. His face lit up. Pure joy. He was home. It reminded him of the life he had with his mom. It almost made me tear up. All of a sudden, he sat down on my couch, turned on the TV, and switched directly to cartoons. I observed him for a while. He was just completely focused on the cartoons. I just wanted him to enjoy the moment, so I didn't say anything to him. I realized I had to call the facility to let them know. The caretakers arrived 10 minutes later. After a lot of convincing, he got up, crying, and he went back to the facility. I called the facility 2 days later. We made a deal. His name is Tom, and I now consider Tom my friend. Every Sunday from the day he returned, Tom and his caretakers visit me to watch cartoons. They say it's the highlight of his week. It makes my heart warm. Now, for several years, my thoughts were, let's not meet. Guy on my patio eating from the ashtray. Now my thoughts are, let's meet every Sunday to watch cartoons, my friend Tom. But to know that one had a good ending, it's very good. The other 3 also had some good endings, in a kind of, maybe. So let's hope. But that's it for this Reddit Let's Not Meet stories. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's a little break from true crime and all that jazz. It also allows me to kind of take a break from researching cases, and that is exactly what I'm getting ready to do today, is finish researching the Freddie Gray case, start researching on another case, and then editing and uploading the Sandra Bland finale, and then I have a lot of other things to do. I have a whole to-do list, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!